So let's stop here for a second. Does it bother you that he chose, because he did choose, or the people around him chose not to play at Kentucky, or is that totally understandable and just something that makes him harder to evaluate, but not something that should be necessarily used against him?
I mean, I don't know if it'll be used against him or not, but yeah, there was, I don't know if this really ever got to, I mean, we talked about this on the podcast. I don't know if it got to a point of national conversation that was consistent, but certainly it was talked about plenty at Kentucky, even though the Wildcats had a good team and a bounce back season after what happened the year before. This will he, won't he, Shaedon Sharpe deal. And the reason why I think there wasn't even more noise made about it was Hamidou Diallo went through this process like 5 years. Has it really been 5 years since he did this? Maybe 4 years ago. It's wild how time can fly sometimes. But Hamidou Diallo, enrolled early, didn't play, then wound up suiting up for Kentucky, and then used that on the way to eventually being drafted. And we look up, and Hamidou Diallo was, he was a freak athlete with good potential, but hasn't really amounted to anything just yet. Sharpe clearly has a higher ceiling than that, but the way that it was reported and the word coming out was he's not going to play. He's going to play next season. And then there was this ever lingering question of, well, can he get eligible? Will he be? I don't know. Some of the stuff surrounding Shaedon Sharpe's graduation diploma eligibility, like he is eligible now for the draft. He's going, but I don't know. That was a bizarre situation. Now, he's made the right decision to go into the draft. If you're projected to go in the top 10, you got to go. And we agree on that entirely. But I'd certainly have questions if I was in a front office, just to at least get some insight into why didn't you play? Obviously, talk to Cal, talk to people in Kentucky, get a little bit more of that. It would have been great to see him play. Kentucky would have probably been better had he played because of his natural talent there. Although they had a generally good thing going. They had the National Player of the Year. Yeah, they lost in the first round to St. Peter's and all that stuff as a 2 seed. That was disappointing. But yeah, man, I just keep coming back to the fact that he is the ultimate pandemic prospect because a lot of his stuff, a lot of what he was looked at, he wasn't, he didn't play for the better part of a year, and then he was watched over a screen. People weren't watching these games in person, and he slowly but surely built up his reputation, which is earned. I do think that he was clearly one of the 3 to 5 most talented players in what wound up being his graduating class there. But what are you getting, GP? Like, is it reasonable that his stock has gotten to this point? That's the other thing. I don't know. Again, we have not seen it. He never played college ball. So while the measurables and some of the skills are understandable to why he's gotten to this point, I don't know. It's wild to me on a certain level that he could go 4 or 5 or 6 in this draft and have not played a legitimate competitive game of organized basketball for almost a year at the time when that happens. Because while he's earned that, it's also not a player that it's like, man, this guy was number 1 in his class and was clearly a future lottery pick from the age of 15. That's not what this is. He was a slow but steady riser and then really firmed up his reputation last July. I mean, he was a 4-star recruit less than 2 years ago. So because of that, I'm not saying that he won't be successful. I just find his case to be interesting. And when we talk about guys and the inevitability, when you look around the lottery and you go back 3 years post, 6 years post, 10 years post, and you say, well, look at this, 6 of these guys are just kind of whatever. I'm not saying that he definitely will be that. It just will not surprise me if he'll be that, because frankly, we just don't have a lot to go on. He is a prospect with a lot of risk to him, potentially though with plenty of reward if he indeed hits, because he has the athleticism. There's no doubt about that.
First, let's circle back to the question you asked, or you, if you're working in a front office, would like to ask, like, why did you choose not to play at Kentucky? I think the answer, I don't know what he'll say, but the honest answer is pretty obvious to me. Because I knew I was eligible for the 2022 NBA draft, because I knew I was a top 10 pick, and there's no sense in risking that. It is very difficult to be a 19-year-old and join a team largely of older guys. Oscar Tshiebwe, Kellen Brady, Keon Brooks, Xavier Wheeler. It's very difficult to be a 19-year-old and you got no summer, you got no preseason, and boom, you're just playing games in the SEC. Like, I remember I was on the sideline for that Kentucky at Auburn game, And there were like some whispers, like maybe, especially when Ty Washington went down, it was like maybe now they use Shaedon Sharpe. It's like you cannot throw him into that. That it would be wildly irresponsible. And I think John knew that at that point, but I think his people also knew that at that point. He could have been dropped in January 25th into the season and been awesome. I'm not ruling that out. But I do think from a draft stock perspective, the risk far outweighed any reward. And so I understood why he didn't play. It's also why I never understood why people thought he would play next season. Once it became clear he's eligible for the 2022 draft, let's just break this down logically. You're not playing in the 2021-22 season because you don't want to mess up your draft stock as a probable top 10 pick. But you're going to come back and play in the 2000. Then you're going to turn that down. Like the reason you're not playing is you don't want to risk it. Now you're going to turn it down, come back, risk it, and be in the 2023 draft.
The clarity on that was not clear.
I know. I know.
Behind the scenes, I don't think that was clear, and that's why this kind of led to this point. And what really did Sharper, as people know, that's another sticking point. It just added to the drama.
Well, this is one of those where the further you are away from it, the easier it is to see. Like Kyle Tucker at The Athletic did a nice story on this, where Shaedon Sharpe's people were constantly telling the Kentucky staff he's going to play at Kentucky. They were constantly telling him that. Now, I never talked to Shaedon Sharpe's people. So all I had to do was look at it logically from a distance. Here's a guy who's not playing, in part to protect his draft stock. He's a projected top 10 pick. Why would he, if he's eligible for this draft, why would he come back to school and then risk his draft stock all over again? Like those two things don't line up. I'm not playing in part because I don't want to risk my draft stock, but I'm going to come back and risk it all next season. What? Just go be a top 10 pick. So if you're close to it, like the Kentucky staff, you might be going, hey, listen, I know, I get it, but they're telling us he's going to play next season. So and he's enrolled in classes. If he's going to not play next season, why is he enrolled in classes? I get why if you're up close, you can kind of trick yourself into thinking maybe he really will play for us next season. But from a distance, it never made sense to me. Evidence being, if you go back and look at the top 25-1, literally version 1.0 from the night of the national championship game, I did not have Shaedon Sharpe projected on Kentucky's roster. Even when people were saying he's going to play at Kentucky, I was like, I'll believe it when I see it, because I'm projecting all top 10 picks to not play college basketball next season. So I think that's the answer to that. Either way, like you've noted, he's the biggest high upside shoot for the stars guy available in this draft. He could be the best player in this draft.